Ayy, I got the recipe, never gonna let any op get the best of me. Thought it was distance, but hey, this is next to me. Talk to the spirit, you know I've been heavenly. Company definitely show your trajectory. This ain't a diss cause I say it respectfully. It's time to eat up, bread like a speeder. Taking it deeper and that's how it better be. I never let the comparison get to me. I just remember the promises meant for me. I know the enemy and that he sent for me. I keep the blood of the lemons, my centerpiece. I cannot trust in no crystals or energy. Look at the chemistry, it do not even mix chemically. Most of the tricks, they be gimmicks, they mimic the truth. It's poison and we got the remedy. There is a bomb, apply it. The fire can stand to the tallest of giants. The tyrant and all the suppliers are scheming and lying. They selling his dreams and we buying it. Show me the chicken, I'm frying it. Show me the dough and I'm prying it. Ain't never lacking it, so what I'm packing, he taking it, he magnifying it.
They say you ain't bout it. Tell them that you finna make it, but they doubt it. But you rose like the flower. Tell me what it's like to live with superpowers.
I don't know, but I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I'ma get it. I just know that I'ma get it. 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 Ayy, I got the drive to bust the truck. The gas is stuck. I ain't the one to rely on the luck. I put in work and then he show up. I know it's faith that's in the reps. Ain't no regrets. I do too much. It ain't and I stunt. He call.
Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I see some of our usuals. How are you guys doing today? So glad that you could join me. Today should be really, really good. Hope everyone is having a great day. My name is Temi Siyanbade. I'm a Houston-based attorney and the host of Ask Temi Live, where we discuss the best ways to establish your business, protect your names, and keep your profits. So today we are going to just first of all check in. Where is everyone watching from? Go ahead and drop in the chat where you are watching from. Are you here in Texas? Are you in another state? Go ahead and drop that in the chat box. Let's do a bit of a roll call. Find out where everybody is. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I see you, 24-hour boss. Thank you. I am an overcomer. Ene from Kenya, or Ene I think I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Could you put a pronunciation in the chat? That'd be awesome. I'd love to pronounce your name the correct way. But you all are welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited. All right. NYS, is that New York? Okay. All right. From up north, I'm here for it. Let's go. Let's go. It still is hot. It's still hot. It's still hot in Texas. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to all of you today. So, we are going to answer a handful of questions that have come up, and then we are going to talk a little bit about some business and brand strategy. Few things that have kind of come up this week that I'd love to share with everybody. So I hope you are in. We're going to try and maximize our time together. But thank you all for joining. And before we also jump in, so we've talked about where we are. Some of us are still in Texas and burning up. It's hot. The other thing I was going to ask you is I really want us to build a community here. So I want people to know what everybody does. So in the chat box, could you write a one sentence, a headliner about what it is that you do so that the other people in the chat box can also know what is it that you do? All right. I think I'm hearing myself. I forgot I had my other piece here. All right. Awesome. Okay. We're going to stick with this. Let's see. So you all know I'm an attorney, but I'm also a teacher. I think I'm a teacher at heart. Hey, Micah, welcome. Welcome to everyone in the chat box. Go ahead and put in what it is that you do. All right, so we have somebody who is starting a coffee business. That's what's up. I love it. Trying to make sure people have their energy, staying awake during those long meetings, right? Okay. What else do we have going on in the chat box? Let's find out. My goal is really to have this amazing community because there's so many of you out there who are amazing. I have clients who are doing great, amazing things. And I know a lot of the people who are here watching on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you might be watching this, you're doing some amazing things too. So let's take advantage of the fact that we're in a community. Let other people know maybe potentially somebody can connect with someone. All right. I used to be an educator, so that's part of the reason why I do what I'm doing here today. But I'm also an attorney. I help people with their businesses and protecting their brands. And I also do a lot of work with attorneys as well. I help them kind of figure out how to navigate some of the business and branding stuff as well. So if we have any of my attorney folks on the line too, feel free to share. But I am glad that you are here with me today. All right. While that's happening, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some questions. So I had a few questions that I saw pop up, only a handful that I want us to cover today before we get into some of the main things. So here is one of the questions that I wanted us to address on this Ask Temi Live. So this question came in and the person that said, after taking a draw to pay myself, am I understanding correctly that I must pay the 15% self-employment tax in my personal taxes on top of paying taxes in the LLC? This is a great question, and this question really goes to the structure that you're choosing. So when we're talking about entities, right? When we're talking about your LLCs or your corporations and all of those other things, there is a tax component in addition to the legal component. So many times you'll hear me share about the difference between an LLC and a corporation and a partnership and a sole proprietorship. Well, with each of those also comes a tax distinction, right? And so I just recently dropped a video where I walk you through that and I share a chart with you that walks you through those different pieces. And I might bring that back up for our references today. Let's see. Let's do that because I think that would be helpful. So if you give me a second, I'm going to share. But what I want to do is I want us to talk a little bit about what that, how those choices impact your taxes. Because this question is all about, okay, do I have to pay the 15% self-employment tax after paying my personal taxes? So the first thing I kind of want to point out is that with an LLC, right? If you just form an LLC and you don't do anything else, you are, yes, responsible for a self-employment tax. It's standard. And so this is one of the reasons why you see people start becoming strategic with their taxation for their LLCs. They start figuring out, okay, what are the different things that I can do? And so when I pull this up, I wasn't sure if I wanted to share the whole thing, but I think I will if I can find it fast enough. Let's see. Oh, that's not the right one. All right. I was going to bring up a chart that I shared, but you know what? I can talk about it without the chart. So if you are trying to figure out what you're going to do with the taxes, the 15% is the basic amount. And usually we're all paying this type of tax. But when you have an employer, they're paying half of it and you're paying half of it. That's why you see some of your money kind of being taken away from you when you're getting paid that fee or getting paid by your employer. They are taking half of that percentage and they're paying that. When you are the one who has created an LLC, you're the only one responsible for that. Okay. And so that's where you'll see the 15%. Now, what you'll see people do in order to avoid that. Oh, this was the part that I also wanted to say, though. The person asks that on top of paying tax in the LLC. See, when you have an LLC, your LLC is not taxed. Your LLC is not taxed. You and your LLC, the way that the tax scheme happens is it's something called pass-through taxation. So the LLC doesn't have to complete its own tax form. You complete a tax form. You usually do a Schedule C and you put your profits and you put your losses, and that's where you see that tax, that 15% tax. Now, if you don't want that, you have the option with an LLC or a corporation to do a tax election. What does that mean? It means you basically get to choose how you are taxed. And what are your options? You can select to be taxed as a corporation. A corporation, a regular corporation, is taxed both on the entity level. So that means the corporation has to file a tax report, and the people who own it, as they are getting their payouts, their distributions, they have to pay taxes on that. And some people, depending on how much money they have, right, they might do a corporation. The other option that you can have is you can be taxed like a partnership. A partnership is taxed very similar to very similar to your sole proprietorship or your LLC default. It's a pass-through taxation. Now, the happy medium that someone is already putting in the chat box, I am an overcomer, is looking at my notes, is talking about an S Corp. Now, is an S Corp better? I love that question. Let's go ahead and share that because it's completely relevant to this conversation, right? So is an S Corp better? This is where you start to hear a lot of that conversation. And for some people, I'll even say for many people, it is. Why? Well, when you have an S corporation, first and foremost, is an S corporation, I always say this, is not a different entity. You know how you have your bucket of your LLC and your corporation? S corporation is not another entity. It is a tax election. So this is when you're choosing, and you can choose to fall under this election called the S corporation. And the beautiful thing about it is you get that benefit of pass-through taxation, but you can save on that self-employment tax. And the way that you do that is usually when you become an S corporation, you also create an organizational scheme, a legal organizational arrangement where you are an employee of your company. Okay. Now, if you are an employee of your company, remember what I just said about how the company usually pays half of that and you pay the other half? Well, that's what would happen. So you no longer are responsible for that whole 15%. And then the beautiful thing is that the company can write off its payment to you as wages, right? Because you are an employee of the company. So what it's paying you is wages, and they get to say that that's one of its expenses. So you can go ahead and write that off as part of your taxes. So you're able to get some navigation through that to kind of reduce that overall, because you're no longer responsible for that overall 15% self-employment tax. Here are a couple of things to keep in mind, though, is that if you decide that the IRS says that you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. Okay, so a reasonable salary means that depending on whatever industry you're in and whatever role you're in, the amount that you're paying yourself should be close to what is a reasonable amount. Why do they have that rule? Because they know people are crafty sometimes. And so they could see somebody paying themselves a really ridiculous amount, a really, really, really short amount, a small amount, right? And then saying, hey, this is how much I got paid, and now I don't have to pay any taxes on this except for this small amount, right? And that would undermine kind of what the IRS is trying to do, which is trying to make sure that they get taxes to pay for things. Okay, so you want to make sure that if you can decide to do the S corporation route, that you are in fact paying yourself a reasonable salary. And I usually advise people to make sure they have the right accounting software, the right payroll software, and that they have somebody who is helping them. All right, great questions, great questions. All right, let's see what else we have today. All right. Oh, let's follow up with this question. Okay. Good follow-up question. Do you have to be an LLC first before an S corporation, or can you start with an S corporation? You have to create a legal entity first. So you have to create your LLC or your corporation before you can make an election or a request for this special taxation. And this request is done by filling out a specific IRS form. Okay, there are different forms that you fill out depending on whether you want the S corporation election or if you want to be taxed like a C corporation. But you have to form your actual legal entity first. Okay, that's the big thing. It's forming a legal entity. Let me see. I'm really trying to find this chart because I think it would be extremely helpful in our conversation today. But that's a really great question. Okay. If I find it, I will pull it up. Let me pull up one other question that we got today. And if you have specific questions that you have in mind as we do this, let us know. So send me a message and I might even have you come, join the live. It doesn't just have to be my face here. I don't mind sharing the screen. I want to share the screen. So you all let me know if you have some things that you'd like to talk about, and we can talk about it here on Ask Temi Live during our next live. So this other question was, do I need an operator agreement for my new small handyman LLC? So I think what the question was supposed to be is, do I need an operating agreement? And I would say that anytime you form an LLC, you need an operating agreement. An operating agreement is really a document that outlines how you want your business to flow, how you want your business to run. You understand? And so it's important to have that. It really legitimizes your business as well. So there are going to be certain things. Let's say you're going for government contracts, or you're trying to open up certain accounts, or you're trying to go for credit. There are certain times when this type of documentation is important. Now, when you're creating your LLC, most states do not require anybody to file an operating agreement, but the attorneys will all tell you that best practices is to have an operating agreement. Additionally, let's say you're doing some planning for your life in terms of like what happens if somebody were to no longer be able to make decisions for themselves, or they were to pass away, right? And you want to make sure that your business follows a particular order or arrangement or plan that you have in mind. You want to make sure that you have that documented. And one thing that needs to be aligned with whatever your documentation is your operating agreement. Some people have operating agreements that they download online and they haven't really read through, and they actually stop the plans that they have from their estate plans. So maybe they have an operating agreement or a partnership agreement or a shareholders agreement that they haven't read through. And it says that, no, you cannot transfer your assets or transfer this business to anybody who is not an original owner. Or no, you are unable to put this in a trust. And it can put all these restrictions on it if it's not done correctly. So you definitely want to make sure that you have some type of operating agreement in place. Okay. So those are two really great questions. Any other follow-up questions? I kind of had something that I wanted to talk to you guys about. I had two things that are that I was like, let's share on this a bit. Let's talk about this. And so even though we started off talking about some LLC matters and things like that, I also wanted to talk about some branding things. So, we're talking business strategy. So we talked about things that we can do with regards to taxation and business protection. Now I want to switch gears and I want to talk a little bit about naming strategies and brand protection. Okay. When you are doing your business, when you're out there, you're putting your name out there for the whole world to see, and it should be something that helps you stand out in the world, right? It should be something that distinguishes you in the world. But you also want to see if there are ways for you to align yourself with the law so that you can get the benefits of legal protection. So it's not just you on your own trying to defend your brand and trying to protect your brand. And one of the ways that you can do that is by naming your business the right way. Now, there are some secrets to naming your business to getting maximum protection. And I wanted to share a few of those secrets today. So I want everyone to lean in. I want you to get real close. And I want you to hear the secrets that I want to share with you today. And really, the main thing I wanted to share with you is I wanted you to understand the different strengths of protection and the different strengths of names that you can have. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit, if you don't mind. Okay. All right. And you should be able to see my screen. Okay. And so what it is that you're looking at here is a trademark strength chart. See, this is one of the secrets. I told you this was going to be good. There are ways that you can get more or less protection, right, in terms of your entity or in terms of your business name. And it's all about how unique or distinct your brand or business name is, or whatever that trademark is. And so here is the spectrum that is recognized under the law. There are 5 points, right? The 5 points are: you have generic trademarks, descriptive marks, suggestive marks, arbitrary marks, and fanciful marks. All right. And so with these different marks, okay, you have different levels of strength. Now, to your left, you have less protection. So the more you move towards generic, the less legal protection you're going to get. And the more you move towards fanciful, the more legal protection you'll get. What does this look like? It means that for individuals who have more fanciful names, they are going to have a higher chance of getting their trademarks registered. And then they're going to get broader protection in terms of more coverage for their marks than other people. So let's talk about what those 5 different things mean. Okay. All right. So the first one here is we are looking at, I see somebody left a question, so I'm going to come back to that question. But so for this first one, we're looking at generic. So your generic marks, right, are when you are just calling it what it is. So let's say I have a grocery store and I call my grocery store grocery store. I'm not going to get any legal protection for that because there's no distinction. That's not a brand. That's just what it is. You know, if I'm selling computers and I call them computers, it's not a brand. It is what it is. So if I want to get legal protection, if I want the law to empower me to be able to say copycats don't do this, right? I need to make sure I'm moving away from something that is generic. So anytime you see somebody in business and they just call it what it is, that's a generic mark. The next thing that you'll see is your descriptive marks. So if you see, for example, a Chinese restaurant that says best Chinese food, okay? Or you see a car wash that says cleanest cars or car wash galore. Something that is just describing what it is. Again, it feels pretty generic, or just says best car wash or hottest car wash or fastest car wash. Those are not going to get any protection because they are merely descriptive. There's no distinction. There's no uniqueness. Okay. The next thing is suggestive. And here you're going to be able to maybe get some protection. This is when you have something called a suggestive mark, where it suggests its meaning, but it's not really fully there. It's not completely directly out there. So you might see this with the example Peas in a Pod. Peas in a Pod is a brand name for maternity wear. Now it's a little bit, do you see how you can see that image because it's talking about a pea in a pod, which would be something that's being carried, but they're relating it to a baby and a mother. It's that kind of fun distinction that could get you trademark protection. So when you file your application, you have a chance. You actually have a chance of getting it registered because it's like, it's not directly there. It's not exactly descriptive, but it's giving it an idea. And for my people who are doing branding and you're trying to figure out what you're going to name something, I think that if you want to start a good starting place, a good starting point is your suggestive one. The reason why I like suggestive marks, and I'm not like anti-suggestive marks, is that they're really powerful for branding purposes. So for legal, you're able to get some form of protection, but then also you're already conveying an idea in the minds of your consumers. Right. And so I want you to be thinking about that. That's why I said we're doing some brand strategy today. OK, so another example of a suggestive mark is Jaguar cars. Right. So obviously the car doesn't have a Jaguar in it. But when you think about a Jaguar, you think what? You think speed. So for your consumers, they're going to like that name. They're going to be like, oh, I like that car because, it's fast. It's a Jaguar. It's a Jag, but you're still able to get the legal protection because you're not just describing fast car. You get what I'm saying? So I wanted to share this with you. Another one that you could do is arbitrary. You could do an arbitrary mark, right? And so when it comes to arbitrary marks, these are marks that are not exactly the same, right? But they seem kind of random. So your Apple products. And I see we got a couple of people. I have to give a shout out to student loan lawyer number 1, Tate Law. This is Stanley Tate. He's an amazing student loan attorney. If you have any questions about student loans, you have to connect with him. He is the guru. He is the number one person to speak to. So visit his website. Go ahead and put that website. Yeah, I got to shout you out. You can throw that in the chat box. We are building a community here. And subscribe to his YouTube channel and to his email list. It is the best information you're going to find out there, hands down. All right, back to trademarks. So arbitrary, we're talking about things that are not exactly connected. So we're talking about, again, Apple. Where in the world does an apple relate to a computer? Right? It doesn't usually, but you're able to kind of get that connection here. So we want to encourage you in terms of your branding strategy to move towards marks like that. Okay. And it's really distinct. And if you hear the story behind where they came from, that name, they're thinking about ingenuity. They're thinking about ideas. So it allows them to kind of bring in that creativity. So it's a really, really, really cool and powerful way to start branding your company. And the last one is fanciful. So fanciful basically means made up. So think about it. What is an Exxon? No one knows because they made it up. Now we have a definition in our mind, but before the invention of Google, what was a Google? Right? So these are words that are made up. They're playful oftentimes, and they are going to get the most protection because they just made it up. But what I'll say is that with regards to your Exxons or your Googles or your Spanx or all these other ones, they are powerful from legal protection. And if you can get people to understand it, you build such a unique brand. So Spanx, for example, what is Spanx? They played on some words and they created their own term. And now they own that space. So I love your fanciful ones, but I will say that they usually take the most work when it comes to actually building a brand because you don't have the benefit of the suggestiveness kind of happening at the same time. So I saw a question pop up. Hope this has been helpful in terms of looking at this. So let's go back and let's look at this question that I saw come in over here. Let me get rid of this one. And it is, I am overcomer and I am an overcomer. And he said, my mother company has a different name as my coffee name. I got the name for the coffee label and found out a coffee importer has the same name but different logo. I don't think this is good. Oh, I'm so glad you put this in here. Let's talk about this, right? You're right. It's not good on various perspectives, right? So there's, of course, the legal side. And when we're trying to figure out if if there's any risk associated with that, that's going to come from who was using it first. Because when we're talking about trademark law and we're talking about trademark rules, the first thing that we're looking at, oh, yes, y'all, let's talk about it. It's okay. This is a safe space. I know y'all are worried. We might have to do some brand name changes. We might have to do that. I want you to look at it as an opportunity, though. I know it's sad, and that's why I put out this information. Y'all don't miss any of these lives. Go back, binge watch all the videos. I am trying to put you on game because I don't want you to have to start all over. But even if you have to start all over, it's okay. You're going to build a stronger foundation going forward. All right. So I just saw somebody else's comment, and I think I might put both of them here because I think that they're both related. Okay. So, So I Am Overcomer was talking about how they have a different name as their coffee name, and that's okay. Sometimes you have businesses that have business names. Their LLC is one name and their brand name is something else. I think I've kind of, released two modules from my e-course, but I might do a third one because I have a third one that's so good on this topic. It's so good on this topic. I mean, I'm biased because I'm the one who made it, but it really is that good. And it talks about how you can have a business name that's different from a brand name. And so speaking of that, if you find out that somebody else has the same name as you, in order to find out who has that better, who has a stronger right to that name, right? It's the first person who used that name. First person who used it. But even if that person used it first and they didn't register their trademark, they have done themselves a disservice because they can't enforce their strength until they register their trademark. So it doesn't mean they don't have that strength. If they register their trademark and then decide to come after somebody, they can. They have that ability, but they're not able to even bring forth that case until they register their trademark. All right. But you can decide, okay, now that I've seen that there's these two, I can have a brand name that I use to build out my brand that's different from the name of the business. I love to use the example of the Gap because the Gap has a strong brand name, but the Gap is also a company that has many different brands underneath it. So if you've heard of the brand name Athleta, that is owned by Gap. Old Navy is owned by Gap. So there's these different names that are owned by one company. So you can do that as well. Now, if you have the same name as someone else and you have to rebrand, it's okay. You're not the first person to have to do it. And I know that it's not what we want, but I like to think of it this way. So let's think about it let's not think of it from the perspective of, I have to change, but let's think about owning market share and dominating a portion of your market. If you are doing an amazing job with your business, right? And everybody loves Mrs. Sanctified's, I don't know what your business is. So let's pretend you sell these beautiful shoes. You just design these amazing shoes and everybody loves your shoes. They're called Sanctified 84. But there was somebody else who had Sanctified 80 and they're making shoes too, but their shoes are not as awesome as yours. If somebody is looking for you, do you want them to get confused and accidentally end up on Sanctified 80's webpage? Or do you want to make sure that yours is the only one because there is nothing like it out there? That's the brand strategy that I want you to think about. So if right now you entered into a market and you had a name that was similar to somebody else's, right? If you have a name that's similar to someone else's, you really want to step back and say, is that really right for me with regards to my brand? All right. So I see you're sharing your name. Thank you, Mrs. Sanctified, for being so open too. I appreciate your openness because I know it's not easy to do that. And so let's talk about it. Let's get you some help here. Okay. So it seems like you have Faith and Works online tutoring and micro school. All right, so Faith and Works online tutoring and micro school. Now, the first thing that you're going to want to do, right, is we want to see. I don't know if somebody else has the name. We don't know if it's taken. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is do a full search. So we do that with my clients. Whenever somebody starts our process with us, we do a comprehensive search where we search domain names. So that means websites, www. whatever. We search all of that. We search social media. So we look on YouTube, we look on Instagram, we look there. And we also search the United States Patent and Trademark Office to see anything that's been registered that might be similar to it. And we search business records across the nation to see, has anybody registered a business with this name? All right. So that's the first step that we do. And once we do that, we're able to go back and say, okay, this is what exists, and say, is this something that you're likely going to be able to get some protection from? And do you want other people to be able to copy it? Most of the time, people don't want their homegirls or their friends or somebody else to copy that name, and you want that protection. And then we're able to move forward with the trademark. All right. And I see you, Mrs. Sanctified. You said you want to do it right. I want to make sure we get you to do it right too. All right. So Faith and Works online tutoring and micro school. So I would say the end part where you have online tutoring and micro school, you could potentially still keep that in a trademark. The only thing is that when you're submitting your application, we have to do something called getting a disclaimer. A disclaimer is basically saying you recognize that you don't have the exclusive right to certain words or certain elements of your mark. So in this case, where online tutoring and micro school might be terms that other people can use, we disclaim that. And then we ask about the faith and works, right? So if faith and works, now I honestly don't exactly know what faith and works is describing. So it seems it's probably more suggestive or more meaningful. It doesn't sound like it's getting us on our spectrum of getting to the generic or anything like that, right? And so there's potential there. So if this is something that you want to work on, Mrs. Sanctified, make sure you reach out to our office. I'll make sure I put our information out there so that you can schedule an appointment with us so we can talk about it and get you protected. Okay? Because we want to make sure that people do it the right way as well. And I know, again, that this can be nerve-wracking. It can be difficult to kind of figure out what's the right way to name my brand or what's the right mark to do. And so we often ask people to come and meet us at the ideation stage, because we know that you can invest so much into your brand and so much into creating something where you have all of this that you've invested in, the business cards and the website and the this and the that, and you don't want to have to go back and change it. I would also encourage you to make sure you get your trademarks early. I want to give you an example. I've had clients who they're on the other end of the spectrum, where they've had a name or business name that they have used for years, and they've used it quietly. Maybe it's in working with one person or coaching or something like that. They're using it in their industry, but they never, ever got a trademark. I want you to think about a couple of things. The first thing I want you to think about is how is someone across the nation supposed to know that you have this business if you haven't registered it somewhere where they're likely to search? You're not giving them any notice. So you're increasing your chances of having somebody copy you. Okay? The second thing is that then if you aren't doing the search, you don't know when the copycat pops up as well. And what if that copycat doesn't know about you, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, they register their trademark before you, and you have no proof to show that you have higher rights to it, and you weren't available to put up a fight because you weren't monitoring your trademark as well. You've kind of shot yourself in the foot there. And I'm seeing this happening more often. And it really breaks my heart, because these are people who have invested in building brands and building businesses and have become known for something, but they're unable to really scale. Let's say they get to a point where they're like, okay, now I want a trademark, and they register and they realize somebody else has copied it. They're not able to do that. They're not able to get those into those spaces that they want to get into anymore. And now we have to go back to the drawing board. We either have to rebrand, or we have to figure out if we can make a deal with those other individuals, or we have to try and fight it. And then even when we try to fight it, we're not able to get the same amount of damages because they've waited too long. So I don't want you to wait too long. I want you to make sure that you take care of this early. Okay? So we've spent some time, we've been here for almost 40 minutes. I was just but I really hope that you found this valuable. Okay, we have one more question coming in. All right, let's take care of this question, because I want to take care of y'all. Mrs. Sanctified is asking, she said, when I say trademark, do I mean the company name? Oh, I love this question. Do I mean the company name? I mean yes, it could be the company name. And so let me say it this way. It depends. When I say it depends, the reason why I say that is because you can have your business name that is different from your brand name, right? Like that exists. Like your PNGs, your gaps, all of those. There are instances where somebody has a business name that is very different from the name that the world knows them through, right? And so when I say trademark, what I mean with trademarking is a trademark is anything that distinguishes you as the source of a good or a service. That means that it's anything that anybody sees that helps them know that this comes from you. So when we see a swoosh sign, we know that that item should have come from Nike unless somebody copied them. If we see the word Nike, we know that that should have come from the company Nike. If we hear the term just do it, we think of Nike. It's anything that distinguishes you. For most people, one of the primary things that distinguishes them as the source of a good or service is the name that they give their business. For most people. That's not everyone, but for most people. And there's, again, instances where the LLC, the corporation, whatever, they have one name, but there is a name that this organization puts out for the world to see that is associated with them. That's your trademark. That's your mark that you want to protect. And honestly, as you grow in business, you're going to end up with multiple trademarks because you'll have the name that people will associate you with. You'll have the logo that people will associate you with. You'll have the catchphrases that people associate you with. You'll have the programs that people associate you with. You'll have the different product names that people associate you with. So one of the things I was sharing with people is that I'm a makeup girl. I love makeup. There are very distinct makeup names, right? And you hear those names, you think of particular brands. I think of Chestnut lip liner. I am thinking of MAC Cosmetics, right? If I am thinking about Ruby Woo, it's another MAC item. Okay, so I want you to think about it in terms of that. All right. I'm trying to read this last question. I'm an overcomer. Said, would the initials of my first and last name with 59 be accepted? Oh, you guys are asking good questions. We're going to be here for a minute. All right. I think this is going to be the last question for the night. It's so good. It's so good because we could have a whole conversation about names, like your actual name. So there are some rules about using your proper name, your given name, your birth name as a trademark. Okay. One of the rules, generally speaking, there's always an exception, is that your last name, right, is thought of as being kind of descriptive, and they usually won't give someone a right to that mark or that name because it's just their name. It's just describing them. But the exception is if you use your name in business and your name has become synonymous with providing a particular good or a service, then it's okay. Right. So you can have your name, and more so, I see more your first name being taken without any issue. You usually just have to identify. You usually have to sign something if it's based off of a living person that you are that person and you give permission to use your name for this mark. That's usually the process that we take. But we have had people that we've worked with that we've used both their first and their last names because everyone knows them and associates their name with this particular service. You'll especially see this with your celebrities. So think about your celebrity athletes. Think about Beyonce, for example. Like, everybody knows her name. Her name is a trademark, right? If you see the name Beyonce, it is associated with her. So she has the exclusive rights to say, I use this in business. Nobody can start a business and say that, oh, I don't want it to be confused with Beyonce because she has kind of owned that space. All right. You see that again. Alicia Keys, that is a trade name now. That is a trademark name. You can't just use it anyway. So when you have used your name in some type of way that has distinguished you again in commerce, it's all about how you are standing out. It's about that competitive edge. It's always about the competitive edge. And so this is where you see that overlap between law and strategy. You can use the law and make it work for you. You can use it strategically. Okay? So I want you to think about it in that regard. All right. So these have been some great questions. So, and just to make sure I completely tie that up with a bow, would the initials of my first and last name with 59 be accepted? Probably, because you're just doing the initials, and we would have to say it we would have to do it in connection with a particular good or service or class of goods and services. And that's a whole nother topic. Let me know if you want us to talk about that on another Ask Temi Live, because we could talk about kind of choosing your classes and what that means. But I think it would, but it's all subject to an actual trademark search. Okay. I have enjoyed this so much. I just love working with this community. I really want us to see what can we do to build this community. As we wrap up today, I'm going to make an ask. Someone said, do I drink coffee? I am an overcomer. I drink coffee when I need to drink coffee. I avoid it. But then there are those days that you have casework and you have things to do. So once in a while I drink coffee, and I usually drink hazelnut. Anybody else drink coffee? We have a hookup. Okay. I am an overcomer. That's our coffee supplier. So just stay connected with this community. Stay connected. Now, what I'm going to ask is, the first thing that I realize is I put out a lot of videos. I try to put out at least one every week, and not everybody gets to hear about it. So if you could make sure, I know you all are subscribers, also turn on your notifications. That's how you're able to make sure you stay connected. You want to make sure you turn on your notifications so that you see this. And then I want you to share this. I hear of so many people who make mistakes, and it breaks my heart. This is the only reason why I still do this, is I want you all to be put on game. I want people to know it. So I'm going to ask that you share either this live or your favorite Temi video, right? Whatever video that got you hooked, where you're like, she is sharing some knowledge, share that on social media, share that on on one of your platforms, share that with your business besties. Let them know. I do not want people making mistakes and leaving money on the table. Okay. We want to put an end to that. We want to make sure we are helping each other out. All right. So that's all for tonight. Make sure if you have more questions, again, we're going to keep doing these lives. I'm going to try and do at least one live each month. But if you want to stay connected, if you have not already signed up for the email list, you definitely want to do that. I've been also reaching out to people. We were talking about imposter syndrome this past week in the email, and it was good. It was so good. I got some feedback. People are enjoying the email list. So make sure you join that as well. And we also let you know about things that are happening here. If we're doing a live, if we're having some type of event coming up, we have different promotions that go through the email list. So make sure you go to the website and you sign up for that as well. Let me make sure I've got that. And I think that is all. Let me go ahead and put this in the chat box for you. This is where you can sign up for the email list and get our checklist. All right. I just put that in the chat box for you. And thank you. I am an overcomer. I'm excited about tasting your coffee. I will drink your coffee when you send it. I promise. Okay. In fact, the sooner you send it, I probably have a cup of that coffee the next time we do that live when I have it. All right. Make sure I share it with the world to see, because I want everyone to know. Oh, and that reminds me. Yeah, we're getting some sponsorships. So you all need to make sure you continue to share. I have some people who've been reaching out. They want to give you all some free stuff. So share this. Keep joining. All right. So that's all for me today. I've been talking. My voice is a little dry. Got to drink some water. But it's been amazing hanging out with all of you today. I hope you have a great day. Remember, stay connected. Go back and watch these videos so that you can stay on game, so that nobody plays you. All right. I'm here. I'm looking out for you in your corner. All right. That's all for today. Take it easy. And the next Ask Temi Live will probably be middle of October, maybe not beginning. So see you soon.
I used to stick around, definitely not for too long. But boy, you got me hooked and made me wanna write this song.